Wood splintered like gunfire. The front door to my grandfather's cabin exploded inward, shards scattering across the floorboards. Her heels clicked through the wreckage, sharp, deliberate, like she was walking down a courtroom aisle she believed she owned. And there I sat, beer sweating in my hand, the state attorney general himself across from me. That woman had just committed 6 felonies in front of the one man in the state who could bury her under the prison she deserved. She didn't even flinch, didn't even look at him. She looked at me, eyes glittering, lips curled into that smile of someone who thought they were untouchable. And in that instant, I realized something chilling. This wasn't about neighborhood rules. This was war. But to understand how we got here, I need to take you back. 6 months earlier, I thought she was just another neighbor with too much time and too little purpose. My name's Marcus Henley, 52 years old, retired after 3 decades stringing power lines and building grids that lit up half this county. I'd finally earned my peace, a simple cabin on Clearwater Lake, 2 acres of heaven bought by my grandfather back in 1963. Logs hand-hewn, fireplace stone by stone, the kind of place that creaked with history instead of fashion. Off-grid by choice, solar panels humming, well water cold enough to bite your teeth, mornings wrapped in mist that felt like nature's breath itself. It was more than land, it was legacy. Pop always said, the land picks you, not the other way around. And he was right. That cabin chose me. It carried his sweat, his calluses, his stubborn pride. He also left me with another piece of wisdom, one that would come back like prophecy. Marcus, when someone wants your land real bad, find out why, because it's worth more than they're telling you. Enter Delilah Cromwell. Most folks just called her Karen, but in reality she was something sharper, colder, fresh from a California subdivision where being queen of the cul-de-sac was apparently a full-time career. She rolled into our quiet lakefront like a storm front. Pearl white Escalade, vanity plates that read Rule 1, a blazer sharp enough to cut glass. And on her chest, pinned like a sheriff's badge, that golden emblem, HOA president. She wasn't here to build community. She was here to conquer it, and the first shot fired in her silent war landed squarely on my porch. It was a Tuesday morning when I first heard the sound. Click, click, click. Designer heels on my wooden dock, invading the quiet like a hammer on glass. The mist was still lifting off Clearwater Lake, loons teaching their chicks to dive, the kind of morning that reminded me why Pop called this place heaven. And there she was, intruding like she owned the sunrise. 10 minutes later, a notice flapped against my screen door, bright, official-looking, as if the paper itself had authority. Violation citation. My dock, the same dock my grandfather and I rebuilt when I was 12 years old, was suddenly labeled unsightly and damaging community property values. Fine, $500. Compliance required within 72 hours. I had to read it twice because it felt less like a warning and more like a threat. This wasn't a friendly chat with a new neighbor. This was a declaration of war written in legal jargon. Being a reasonable man, I walked over to explain. My property, after all, had stood here 40 years before her HOA ever existed. She stood in my driveway like she was staking a claim, hands on her hips, perfume thick enough to burn the back of my throat. Her eyes didn't blink when she said, "Everyone on this lake answers to me, sweetie. Ask the Hendersons how well fighting me worked out." The Hendersons, my elderly neighbors who'd lived on this lake for 23 years, had just sold their cabin last month, claiming they needed to downsize, but their eyes had looked haunted when they told me. Something in her tone made my stomach twist cold. Then she did something that burned hotter than any fine. She started circling my cabin, snapping photos like a real estate appraiser sizing up a foreclosure. Solar panels, garden beds, porch railings. Pop carved by hand. Every shot felt like an intrusion, a stripping of privacy I didn't consent to. By the end of the week, 3 more citations appeared. Solar array placement, fence too rustic, porch railing a safety hazard. Each fine stacked higher, escalating, a paper trail designed to bury me alive. At first, I thought she was just a power-drunk neighbor, the kind of petty tyrant who mistakes authority for respect. But the unease coiled deeper, the way she moved, the way neighbors suddenly avoided my eyes. It wasn't just control she wanted, she was clearing ground for something bigger. And Pop's words echoed in my head like a warning bell. Find out why they want your land. 3 days after the compliance deadline, the real hammer dropped. A certified letter, heavy with legal intimidation, landed in my mailbox. The letterhead gleamed with gold embossing, Blackstone, Meyer and Associates. One of those silk suit law firms where an hour costs more than a month of honest work. The words were poison. Cease and desist, violation of community waterway regulations. My dock wasn't just ugly anymore. According to them, it was illegal. They demanded $3,000 in retroactive fees and threatened to file a lien against my property if I didn't pay within 10 days. My first reaction was the same as any man who's worked his whole life with calloused hands and a straight back. Panic. I wasn't a lawyer. I was a builder, a fixer. I had wrenches, not litigation. But then another voice cut through the fear. Pops. Marcus, when someone legal talks you out of your land, go to the records. Don't trust the paper they hand you. Find the paper they're hiding. So that's what I did. I oved down to the county courthouse, the kind of place where the walls smell like old wood polish and forgotten secrets. In the basement archives, among dust and mildew, a clerk named Betty, who remembered Pop from his fishing days, helped me pull the original surveys. And there it was. Proof carved in ink and seal. My grandfather's deed didn't just cover the cabin, it stretched 50 feet into the lake itself. That dock wasn't trespassing on community property. It was sitting dead center in my lake, stamped, dated, untouchable. And the kicker? The HOA wasn't even founded until 1998, 35 years too late to touch a single nail my grandfather hammered. I walked out of that courthouse carrying more than papers. I carried fire. They hadn't just overstepped, they'd lied, weaponizing bureaucracy to scare me off land that was ironclad mine. But that fire dimmed the moment I pulled into my driveway. Her Escalade sat sideways across it, blocking my path like a predator crouched in wait. She rolled down her window just an inch. Her smile was slow, reptilian. Just reviewing community parking regulations, Marcus. Might take a while. The engine idled, exhaust mixing with her chemical perfume until the air itself felt poisoned. She was sending me a message. She didn't care about rules, law, or fairness. She cared about dominance. And dominance doesn't stop with a driveway. Within a week, Karen unveiled her next weapon. She called it the Lakeside Beautification Committee, a friendly name on paper, but in practice it was her private army. Anyone who didn't fall in line found themselves under sudden scrutiny. Neighbors who used to wave at me now crossed the street like I was contagious. Smiles were replaced with silence, silence with suspicion. Her Facebook page became the battlefield, every post dripping with passive-aggressive venom, wrapped in the language of community care. Confrontation. Net about declining property values. Some people just don't care about our lake. Hashtags like #LakesideStrong, #protect our values. The comment sections read like public executions. People I'd known for decades parroted her words as if she'd hypnotized them. Suddenly, my solar panels were dangerous, my garden was messy, my cabin an eyesore. It wasn't truth, it was propaganda. One evening, Tom and Susan Martinez, neighbors I'd trusted for 20 years, pulled me aside during a walk. Their eyes darted nervously, voices lowered. Marcus, you should know. Karen told us if we didn't file a complaint against you, we'd be next. They weren't alone. Another family whispered that Karen had already targeted old Mr. Peterson for non-regulation window boxes and threatened a young couple's playground as unsightly. She had dirt on everyone, or at least made them believe she did. Then came the vandalism. I woke one morning to find my mailbox slashed with orange spray paint. Comply or leave. My hidden solar-powered camera caught it all. Headlights at 2:30 a.m., the outline of that pearl-white Escalade, license plate clear as day. I called the sheriff's office, thinking justice might finally tip my way. Instead, guess who rolled up in the cruiser? Deputy Chad Cromwell, Karen's nephew. He gave my mailbox a bored glance, shrugged and muttered, "Probably just kids. Nothing I can do." His smirk told me he wasn't blind. He was complicit. As I scrubbed the paint from cold metal, the truth stung worse than chemicals. I wasn't just fighting a neighbor. I was fighting a network. Family, neighbors, county enforcers, all wrapped around her manicured fingers. Pop used to say, "Sometimes you need bigger guns for a bigger fight." Staring at the orange ghost of those words burned into my mailbox, I realized this wasn't a squabble, it was a siege. And Karen wasn't done tightening the rope. The next phase didn't arrive with heels or spray paint, it arrived with a polite knock. "Marcus, I'm real sorry about this," said Dale Morrison, clipboard in hand. I knew Dale. We'd worked side by side on electrical jobs years back. Honest guy. But the awkward slump of his shoulders told me he wasn't here as a friend. He was here as an inspector. "Got a complaint about unpermitted structures on your property," he muttered. His eyes said what his words didn't. "You know who filed it." For 3 hours, he crawled through my cabin, measuring every joist, every outlet, every inch of Pop's handiwork. When he finished, he shook his head. "Marcus, your place is tighter than most new builds. Whoever filed this is wasting everyone's time." But he wasn't the last. The very next day came Janet Bennett, environmental officer, clipboard shining with official seals. "Report of septic contamination," she said. Another day lost while she dug through soil samples and water tests. Results? Perfectly clean. The day after that, Fire Marshal Bob Rodriguez inspecting my solar panels for hazardous wiring. Same outcome. Nothing wrong. On paper, I was spotless. In reality, the paper trail told another story. One complaint after another, official visits stacking up like shadows in a file. To the county's eyes, I was now a problem property owner. The pattern was deliberate. Bureaucracy turned into a slow, grinding weapon. Meanwhile, Karen played her media game. Channel 7 ran a community spotlight segment featuring her as the concerned citizen fighting for safety. She stood right on my dock, the dock she swore was illegal, gesturing dramatically as she spun lies for the cameras. Her voice honeyed, her words poison. "We just want a safe, beautiful community for our families. Some people don't share that vision." My phone buzzed like a hornet's nest that night. Texts, emails, neighbors calling me reckless, dangerous, even criminal. Half the lake saw me as a menace now because Karen had fed them a story slicked with authority and sanctimony. That's when Jake Martinez, my old buddy from the electricians union, called. "Marcus, that woman's full of it. Everyone knows you built half the clean energy backbone in this county." Within days, 20 master electricians rolled by to publicly vouch for my work. For the first time, Karen's narrative cracked. But cracks only make snakes slither faster, and Karen was about to shed her skin. The smear campaign began with a single post. "Urgent safety concerns regarding aggressive behavior from lakefront resident. Please keep children away from the eastern shore." Hashtags, #protect our kids, #lakeside safety. The aggressive resident was me. Within hours, her post was shared over 40 times. By sunset, neighbors I'd known for years looked at me like I was a stranger, or worse, a threat. Heard he threatened an HOA board member. Always thought something was off about that man. The lies multiplied like mold in a damp basement. But the part that cut deepest wasn't the words, it was the fakery. I recognized stock photo faces commenting with outrage, the kind of astroturf accounts political operatives use to flood narratives. Karen wasn't gossiping. She was orchestrating a professional smear machine. 2 days later, I was served with a restraining order petition, filed by Karen. On public record, it painted me as unstable, dangerous, verbally threatening, a man unfit to be near families, all of it fabrication. Judge Patricia Hrees, who'd known my family for decades, tossed it out immediately for lack of evidence. But the damage was permanent. Now there was a legal paper with my name and the word threats attached. And in the court of public opinion, dismissal doesn't erase suspicion. I'd sit on the porch at night, beer in hand, wondering if this fight was worth it. The cabin creaked the same way it always had. The lake mist rose soft as ever, but peace was gone. Pop's chair no longer felt like comfort. It felt like a burden, like his voice was whispering, "Don't let them erase what we built." Then came the turning point. Retired Judge William Carter, who used to fish with Pop, appeared at my door with a thermos of coffee. "Marcus, men like me have seen this before. When someone goes this far to crush you, it's never just personal. There's money behind it. Big money." He urged me to document everything: citations, visits, posts, threats. He said what I already suspected. This wasn't HOA politics. It was organized theft dressed as community service. And here's where I'll stop to ask you, watching this story unfold, if you've ever felt the weight of being falsely accused, if you've ever fought against a system designed to break you, I want you to flood the comments with this phrase: "I won't be erased." Write it twice, so it can't be ignored. Because this story isn't just mine, it's ours. Judge Carter wasn't exaggerating. Within a week of his warning, the first real clue surfaced. Karen had been parading safety concerns through county meetings, pushing for stricter zoning rules on lakeside properties. Buried deep in the proposals was a quiet line: properties found non-compliant could be subject to mandatory buyout by the HOA or partnered developers. Buyouts. That was the game. She wasn't protecting the lake. She was clearing the chessboard. I dug into county records, late nights scrolling through public filings while the glow of my laptop painted the cabin walls, and there it was, a development corporation called Clearwater Holdings LLC. On paper, just another company. In reality? Their mailing address was the same as Karen's lawyer. Their board listed 3 names, one of them her brother-in-law. The concerned citizen wasn't just weaponizing rules, she was laying groundwork for a real estate takeover. The plan was sick in its elegance. Smear me, bury me in citations, isolate me socially. When I either cracked under the pressure or was bankrupted by legal costs, Clearwater Holdings would swoop in to rescue the community by buying my land for pennies. And my cabin, Pop's legacy, would be flattened for another glassy vacation home rental. As the pieces clicked, anger gave way to clarity. This wasn't a neighbor feud, it was a hostile acquisition. I wasn't the only target either. Peterson, the old man with window boxes, his lot was prime for subdivision. The young couple with the playground, their land backed onto road access. Karen wasn't just tightening the noose around me, she was weaving it around the whole shoreline. The thought made me sick. I wasn't just fighting for myself anymore. Every family who called this lake home was sitting on a time bomb they didn't even know had been planted. That night, I walked the shoreline under a full moon, the water black as glass. I whispered aloud to the night air, to Pop's memory. They think they can erase us. They think they can buy our silence, not while I'm breathing. But to take this fight further, I needed more than righteous anger. I needed allies, proof, a way to turn Karen's weaponized system back on her. And the first person I thought to call wasn't a neighbor. It was a journalist. Her name was Rachel Kim, an investigative reporter with a reputation for chasing stories others were too scared or too bought to touch. I remembered her from a piece she did years ago, exposing a crooked land grab in a neighboring county. If anyone could smell the rot behind Karen's mask, it was her. When I called, she didn't hesitate. Meet me at the diner off Route 14. Bring everything you've got. I slid into a booth across from her, dropping a binder thick with complaint slips, inspection notes, screenshots of Karen's posts, even the LLC filings I'd uncovered. Rachel flipped through them silently, her pen scratching quick notes on a yellow legal pad. After 10 minutes, she looked up, her eyes sharp as glass. Marcus, this isn't neighbor drama. This is systemic fraud. I can tie this Clearwater Holdings to 2 other HOAs across the state. Each one followed the same pattern: manufactured complaints, targeted harassment, buyouts. If I publish this, it won't just be about your cabin, it'll bloat it. Move the lid off a statewide scheme. For the first time in months, I felt something shift. Not relief, not yet, but hope. Rachel warned me, though. Once they know I'm on the story, they'll double down. Expect smear pieces, false police calls, maybe even sabotage. You ready for that? I thought about Pop's chair, about the smell of pine when we first built the deck, about the sound of his laughter echoing across the water. I've been ready since the first letter showed up. That night, Rachel set up cameras, interviews, and document trails. She spoke to neighbors, most too scared to go on record, but some finally willing to whisper the truth. Karen had pressured them too, threatened them with fines, hinted at legal trouble, all while dangling the promise of developer solutions. The more Rachel uncovered, the more the mask slipped. Karen wasn't a selfless protector of community values. She was the smiling front woman of a corporate scam. And when Rachel's editor greenlit the piece for primetime release, I knew the war was about to leap from HOA meeting rooms to every living room in the state. But Karen wasn't going to roll over. No snake sheds its skin without a fight, and the next move she made would hit closer to home than I ever imagined. The first strike came at night. A rock wrapped in duct tape hurled through my cabin's front window. The glass shattered like a gunshot, waking me from half sleep. When I pulled the tape free, a single word was scrawled across the crumpled paper inside: leave. I stood barefoot among the shards, staring into the darkness outside. The forest was still. No footsteps, no car engines. Just silence so thick it pressed against my ears. Whoever threw that rock knew the woods well enough to vanish before I even hit the porch. 2 days later, Rachel's tires were slashed outside the diner where we'd been meeting. She laughed it off as part of the job. But I saw the tension in her jaw, the way her hand lingered near her phone like she was half expecting worse. Karen was escalating. And if the smear campaign had been designed to bury me socially, this phase was meant to break me psychologically. Then came the fire. It started small, a trash can by the tool shed, flames licking against the night air. I caught it just in time, stamping and dousing before it spread to the cabin. The sheriff's deputy wrote it off as kids messing around, but I knew better. The smell of accelerant lingered even after the smoke cleared. That was the breaking point for me. This wasn't petty harassment anymore. This was arson. This was attempted erasure by flame. Rachel's camera caught me that night, sitting on the porch with a baseball bat across my knees, speaking into the lens like a man giving testimony. They can break my windows, they can burn my shed, but they will not take this cabin. This land carries my father's name, my family's blood, and I'll fight to my last breath before I let them steal it. When Rachel aired a preview clip of that recording, something unexpected happened. Strangers online began sharing it. People from other towns, other states, flooded the comments. This happened to my uncle. Our HOA tried the same scheme. Stay strong, Marcus. We see you. Karen had tried to isolate me. Instead, her attacks had made me a rallying point. But that only made her next move more ruthless. Because the following morning, a certified letter arrived, and stamped across the top in cold black ink were the words, "Foreclosure Notice." The letter shook in my hands as I read it. Notice of foreclosure proceedings. They claimed I was delinquent on mandatory assessments levied by the HOA, charges I'd never agreed to, fees that had multiplied like weeds in the dark. Hidden penalties, compounding interest, administrative costs. On paper, it looked like I owed tens of thousands of dollars. In reality, it was nothing but fiction, forged through loopholes and signatures I never gave. Karen had been laying this trap from the beginning. Every bogus citation, every non-compliance fee, every fine I refused to pay, it had all been meticulously tallied in the shadows of HOA paperwork, and now she wasn't just trying to push me out socially. She was trying to erase me legally. I drove straight to my lawyer's office, a man named Harold who'd defended farmers in land disputes for 30 years. His lined face grew darker with each page he flipped. "Marcus," he muttered, "this isn't just an HOA complaint anymore. They've weaponized lien law. If we don't counter this immediately, they'll seize the property through court order." It hit me like a punch to the gut. My father's cabin, my inheritance, my legacy, could be stolen not with chains or fire, but with ink and signatures. Rachel filmed as Harold explained the process on camera. This is how ordinary families lose generational land. HOAs file liens, pile up fraudulent fees, then foreclose when the owner can't pay. Developers swoop in and the cycle repeats. It's legalized theft. The footage was damning, but it didn't change the reality. I had 30 days before a judge would decide whether I kept my land or watched it auctioned off to Karen's developer friends. That night, I sat on the porch staring at the water, the foreclosure notice folded tight in my fist. For the first time, I felt the edges of defeat creeping in. Maybe Karen had finally cornered me. Maybe Pop's cabin was doomed no matter how hard I fought. But then my phone buzzed. A message from Rachel. "CBS wants to pick up the story. National spotlight, Marcus. This is bigger than Karen now." For the first time in weeks, I smiled through the exhaustion. If they wanted to drag me into court, then fine. I'd drag them into the light. The courthouse was packed the day my case was heard. Neighbors filled the benches, some whispering nervously, others avoiding my eyes. At the front sat Karen, immaculate as ever, flanked by her lawyer and a representative from Clearwater Holdings. She smiled like a queen surveying her conquered land. But she wasn't expecting cameras. Rachel had secured permission to film.